first time I witnessed pure artistry.
1968, Planet of the Apes.
I was sitting in the cinema next to my mum, watching mastery unfold before my very eyes. After the film, I asked her, how did they get those monkeys to do those things? And she patted me on the head and she said, it's not real, pet. It's just acting. That's when I knew. If they can teach those monkeys to act that brilliantly, just imagine what I could bring to the world.
So you became an actor because you thought the monkeys were actually...
Riding horses, I did, yes. When in fact, they were simply acting as if they were riding horses. I still can't get my head around it, to be honest.
Good for you, dude.
You know, it is interesting how far the makeup on the monkeys has come since the original 1968. Now, that clip that we just played was from Shang-Chi, the 2021 Marvel movie, and that was Sir Ben Kingsley, Trevor Slattery. And of course, we're aware that those monkeys aren't acting, that those are humans in amazing makeup done by John Chambers, who is somewhat of a makeup legend in the industry, responsible for creating the pointed ears on Spock. He got an honorary Oscar for this movie, Planet of the Apes. Now you're wondering, who am I? I'm not Raph. No, I'm Marmaduke Carlston. I'm one of the guests on today's episode of the Canon. I'm joined today by Bob Cram, one of our recurring guest co-hosts, and Jacob Holmes, who actually recommended that we start this episode with this clip from Shang-Chi. And don't worry, Raph is still here. He's tied up in the corner. He unwillingly agreed that we could start the episode this way. Raph, if you're still there, blink twice.
Duke,
He blinked.
You did a beautiful job of introducing this episode. I now understand why you are the head honcho here at Screen Age Wasteland. I might have to give up my hosting duties of this show because that intro was perfect. It was amazing. Thank you for setting the table for this episode. It's going to be an exciting one. We've got Bob, we've got Jacob, we've got you, Duke, we've got me, Raph. It's going to be a good time. Thank you, Duke.
You're welcome. And don't forget, we got these damn dirty apes with us as well.
They're just acting.
Can I just say it feels like right now it feels like Raph is kind of the Charlton Heston and the rest of us are the
Charlton Heston is overacting in this movie. I noticed that so much watching it this time around. All
right, before we get into all of Duke's hot takes, I'm going to take the show back. Jacob, I do like that connection point that you made. It would be really cool if we were actually, adept enough to come up with that as an actual bit for the show, but I think we just kind of happened upon it. But still hilarious. Duke, seriously, thank you for doing the intro. That was amazing. Before we get into all of your hot takes, I don't want you bashing the star of this movie, 5 minutes into this episode. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a step back and we're going to ease our way into the movie a little bit. But before we do that, Duke, Bob, Jacob, how is everyone doing? Just let's start there. How is everyone?
Great. Weather's nice finally. Summer is upon us. I don't have a cold. If you listen to the Breakfast Club episode, I was a bit sick under the weather. Now the weather's nice outside. The weather's nice within my body. I'm good. Thanks for asking.
Well, I'm in a bit of a busy season. Sorry, I knew that was going to happen. A bit of a busy season work-wise, but everything's been going good. We just actually moved and closed on our first house. So that has also kept us very busy.
Congrats.
Yeah, it's exciting sitting in it right now. And also somehow found a way to finish Promising Young Woman Canon article by the skin of my teeth today. So we're cooking with gas.
That's fantastic. We're coming off a weather disaster here where we had like a ton of trees down. It looks like a post-apocalyptic film outside my house right now, but we've got internet and power back, so we're all good here. Just trying to get caught up on work and everything else. But health-wise, we're good, and once again, have all of our streaming options. So happy with that.
Amazing. Well, glad to hear everyone's good. Glad to hear Bob survived the weather storm. Glad to hear Duke's feeling better. Glad to hear Jacob is a homeowner now. Here in New York, about a week and a half ago, as of the release date of this episode, we experienced an earthquake. It was my first earthquake. It was pretty wild. It was pretty insane. But we survived, made it through, and now we're here. Have you guys ever felt an earthquake? Any of you?
No. Can't say I
Yes.
have.
Yeah. It's not a big one, but a small one. I've never felt one that was centered in New Jersey, but it seems appropriate somehow.
Yeah, right? Does somehow seem appropriate. So weird, so bizarre. It's like kind of the appeal of living in the Northeast is like the most intense weather event that you'll get, or like natural disaster, we'll say, is a big snowstorm. You might get the tail end of a hurricane, but we're not in twister territory. We're not in, well, what I thought we were in an earthquake territory. We're not really in bad hurricane area. That sentence didn't really make sense. We're not in a bad hurricane area. But so, like really the only thing I've ever had to worry about is like a snowstorm, and that's about it. But now I got to deal with earthquakes. I would have to move to California for that. But
It's the start because of course you're going to end up in a forbidden zone at the end of things. So
nice.
Oh,
Nice.
Nicely done, Bob. Nicely done.
Amazing. Yeah. So, okay.
Way to segue.
Way to segue. What a professional. Duke, your hosting duties, you may have just lost them to Bob. I gotta say. Bob's
Damn
coming
you.
through.
Damn you all to hell.
So, listener.
That's a cool movie, is it not?
that was a Shatner delay there.
Listener, if you haven't realized already, we are talking about 1968's Planet of the Apes. Very exciting movie, a seminal piece of science fiction cinema. Very excited to talk about it. Very excited to talk about it with these three gentlemen here. I think we can probably get into the movie itself. What do we say?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Jump right in.
Let's do it. All right, Duke, I know you want to get your hot takes off the ground, but I do want to start with like your general thoughts about this movie. I know that you did the written version of the canon entry for this movie, so I don't know if that means that you are the official authority on all things Planet of the Apes here at Screen Age Wasteland, but what are your sort of general thoughts about this film?
Okay, well, first, I'm not an authority on at least the original Planet of the Apes. Oh, come on, Ryan. No, way back when the canon was first introduced, there was also an idea that, feel free to pick films that you haven't seen and kind of watch and then do a write-up. So I had never seen Planet of the Apes, so I thought this would have been a good opportunity for the written one. And I did that back in August of 2023. So recently rewatched this again after watching it in August of last year. So no, I've seen the recent reboot series, but no, I've never seen the original. But I knew of the twist. It's like The Empire Strikes Back. You sort of, if you didn't grow up when the movie came out, you come to kind of know the big third act twist ahead of time, which does kind of impact how you view the film. So yeah, I'll speak more on that later, perhaps. But yeah, so no, I'm just a newcomer to the original Planet of the Apes series.
Got it. Well, Jacob, what about you?
Yeah, so similar. I can't remember exactly when I first saw this one, I had only seen it one time before yesterday, but I came in. I think the first. No, I think I'd seen Rise of the Planet of the Apes, but really, I think Dawn probably be like, okay, I'm gonna check out. Everyone calls the original classic, and I think I also knew the twist already. So, but watched it first time, and so yeah, that was really really good. Sometimes when you sit down and watch a classic movie, it kind of like, oh, okay, I can kind of see it, but not for me. But no, this is really good. And on the second viewing, I think even the makeup and stuff was better than I remembered. The prosthetics and all that, which we've already talked about. But yeah, I think it holds up really well.
Absolutely. One of those movies that's still relevant, what is it, 50 plus 60 years, after it was made, still super relevant today, almost as relevant now as it was back in 1968. Bob, what are your general thoughts?
Well, well, of course, I'm the old man of the group, so I'm the only one that's probably seen this more than a couple of times. In fact, when I was a kid, I had a Cornelius and a Taylor toy, which I specifically remember because I was like 5 years old going to first grade, and a kid named Gibby Rosignol took both of them and threw them on the roof of the school. It was only a one-story schoolhouse. Right? Right?
Bob has
that man.
receipts.
I have.
Gibby, if you're listening, you're a jackass.
Yeah. So, and I never saw them again. But yeah, I saw the TV show in reruns. I saw the movie on cable when I was a kid, and I had no idea about the twist the first time I saw it. So I believe I stood up and was like, "What?" Now it's everybody knows it. But at the time I had not. I was like 5 or 6 years old. So I was like, "This is crazy." Yeah. So I've been watching the show every 5 or 6 years for like the last 30 years or whatever.
Amazing. I love it. Well, okay, since it's been brought up and it's kind of the major selling point of the movie, should we start at the end, and should we just start with talking about the twist?
Yes.
That's what everyone's here
Yeah.
for, right? So we may as well just start there. Bob, I'm going to go back to you for this because you sort of experienced it in its like full effect in a way that Duke, Jacob, and myself, as people who have only ever lived in a post Planet of the Apes world, we've always known the twist. It's been referenced 1,000 times over. It's like maybe the most famous movie ending twist that there's ever been. So just tell us more about like what it was like to experience that as a 5-year-old for the first time, who like did not go into the movie knowing that there was some amazing twist at the end of it.
Right. So, I mean, even in the 80s, this movie was still, it's just kind of a weird movie. You land on a world where apes have a civilization. It's just so, out of context from what you would be getting from your average sci-fi films, especially post Star Wars, which was all I really had to go on at that particular point. So I was like, this is kind of a weird combination of like Tarzan and weird ape things. It's like Tarzan's been trapped in an alternate universe sort of thing. So I kind of went on that feeling like, what if Tarzan came back to civilization and everybody was like what he had grown up with? I don't know. That was what was in my head, because I think they were doing reruns of old Tarzan TV shows at the same time. So I just kind of bought into it and went along with the adventure aspects of it, and how cool the ape costumes looked, and how neat the whole concept of ape civilization was. And I just totally thought it was an alien planet. It was like, that's, yeah. We always think human beings will be on other planets. Like every Star Trek episode I'd ever seen. So you go to another planet and everybody's just another human being. Maybe they're blue, but whatever. And so when it came to that last, I mean, it's literally like the last 3 minutes of the movie where they come around the corner and they have a little tease of looking down at them from the torch. And then the camera finally kind of turns around and shows you the Statue of Liberty buried in the sand. It was like lightning to me. It was as shocking as I Am Your Father was. You know, it just, like I said, I just stood straight up and was like, what? And then the movie ends. They don't give you any chance to kind of digest what just happened. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, it was always Earth. Good night. So yeah, I'm sure we talked about it and played Planet of the Apes for like weeks afterwards.
Oh, I'm sure. That's amazing. That's amazing that you got to experience it with its like full effect. That's really cool. Duke, I know that you had some thoughts on the ending that you were gonna hold off on, but now's your time. Now's your time to shine. Let's hear it.
I was just gonna say, if maybe this is a hot take, I don't know. If this was the most iconic movie twist, second only to the Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father. That was really what I was gonna say about the ending. Outside of that, knowing about the twist before you watch it, you do kind of wonder, well, why don't they know that they're on Earth? Because they're landing 2,000 years since they left. They're like, oh, why do we land in water? They know they were going to land back on Earth. And so the geography's changed. And then, I don't know, they come across humans. Again, the twist, brilliantly done. Like, iconic, that Statue of Liberty. You know, Tim Burton was screwed. He had nothing. His with the, what is that, the Lincoln Monument? I'm Canadian, so I don't know. Yeah, okay, Lincoln, but what is it? Ape Lincoln? I don't know. But, you know, I always think, you know, you watch and you're like, how is this? Like, I can see why they don't think it's Earth, but then also I'm like, you got no reason not to think it's Earth as well. So it's like, I don't know. The twist is good. I'm talking more about them not knowing that they were on Earth the whole time.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I guess,
you were watching the movie thinking, because you have the twist in the back of your mind.
Well, I have the twist, and then I'm also, because I know the movie has two iconic quotes, one at the end and the other is, what is it? Get your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape. And then he gets mute, which I didn't actually know about. So then I'm waiting for him to regain his use of his vocal cords. So that's kind of what I was going in. I was like, okay, when is he actually gonna, this twist ending I know is coming. And you kind of know something that the characters don't know when you know that it's on Earth, but they don't. So that's always fun. And then I'm waiting, anticipating when is he going to say that, one of the two iconic quotes. And, you know, I guess knowing the twist isn't always a hindrance, because it can be fun. It can be fun knowing something that the main characters don't. So
do you think it's like abundantly obvious what the twist is going to be when you already know it, like watching the rest of the movie?
Well,
or
it's really hard to say. It's like, because I know that they're on Earth, so I can never really, you just watch and you're like, well, they don't really make it seem like they're not on it, you know? Outside of the fact that the main characters believe that they're not on Earth, there's nothing, you know, there's no landmarks or, you know, foliage or anything that would not look Earth-like, because of course they shot it on Earth. Shocker. So I don't know. It's hard to not. Once you know something, you can't unknow it. You know. Unless, of course, as we see in the movie, they take out a part of your brain, but that hasn't happened to me yet. So
Rewatching it, I think that the only thing that makes sense there is, I don't think they were ever going to return to Earth. So I
I
think
thought,
since,
but I think they were.
well,
Because
no, he says that the plan was for the female astronaut to become the new Eve wherever they. So I think they were supposed to colonize. Yeah, the mission was to colonize some new place. So they, the last thing they were expecting was for the rocket to land, or the ship to land back on Earth.
I was sure that they were actually going to go back.
No,
Because I
I
thought there
don't
was
think
something
so.
about them being.
Well, I think we can all agree that they're terrible scientists, right?
Definitely.
You
And
know, and whoever sent them on this mission, also terrible scientists. It's
oh,
like
but
they
they're.
show up with like 3 days worth of food and like a
I always
backpack.
thought that was weird because when they abandoned the spaceship, they each have one backpack, and I'm watching that and I'm like, well, shouldn't there be a fourth backpack for the woman that died? And but then they open the backpacks and each backpack is different, so it's not like there was, each backpack had the same stuff. So then I was like, okay, I guess, but again, yeah, 3 days of food and
So,
yeah,
all right, before we get into like their actual voyage, Jacob, I just wanted to circle back to you to get your thoughts on sort of how the twist plays out, because it is like one of, if not the most iconic movie twists and endings, despite Duke and his attempts to suck all of the air out of the significance of it. So, Jacob, I want to get your
whoa,
thoughts on how the ending plays out.
I think
right,
that
right.
the twist ending even then is only truly a twist ending for you the first time you watch it. So while it's cool, and I'll never know what it's like for this movie to have that experience like Bob does, but after your first watch, it's kind of like, okay, well, from then on, every time you rewatch the movie, it's going to be like that. So I think the way that it's shot and handled really is a huge deal, because there could have been a lot of ways. They could have rounded the corner of the cliff and the Statue of Liberty could have come into view, and that may have been cool too. But the way it's shot, where you get a bit of the
Mm-hmm.
torch, and you should maybe kind of know what it is, but it looks kind of mangled up. But then you get behind the crown, and it's just so distinctive. It's so much more interesting to see Charlton Heston's reaction kind of through the spikes of the crown before you get the iconic final image. I think that really kind of cements it beyond just the twist to the shot itself.
Yeah. I mean, do you think like the way that it plays, it's more so about his reaction to realizing what has happened, and like even if you know the twist that it was Earth the whole time, that like throughout the course of the movie you're watching him, and like he is of the belief that he's not on Earth and that he's on this distant planet, and he's seeing the parallels between this planet and his home planet. And then at the end, like the weight of the twist is really in his reaction to it, as much as it is just like the shock value of it's Earth the whole time. Because even for me, like knowing it's Earth the whole time, knowing that it ends with that Statue of Liberty shot, throughout the course of the movie, you're really like identifying with him and his sort of journey in sort of trying to understand what's going on. So like you're emotionally invested in his journey, and then when he gets to that twist, it's like a gut punch, because it's about him realizing as much as it's about, shocking the audience. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
Duke, I
well,
don't know if you caught any of that.
yeah, well, I mean, when you watch it, it's kind of this adventure that's bookended by. I mean, he has this. There's this opening where it's just Charlton Heston talking to a recorder and musing about how 700 years later, whether man has stopped killing his brother and starving his neighbor's children and stuff like that. It very much sets him up as this sort of misanthropic character, but at the same time, he hopes that men have become better than they were when he left Earth. So when you get to that ending, it's kind of this this confirmation of, yeah, men didn't get better; they just drove themselves to extinction, and really hammers home this point
Mm-hmm.
beyond sort of the surface level of the movie.
Yeah, for sure. So, Jacob, like with that, the specific use of the Statue of Liberty as like the thing that he sees to point him to the fact that he's been on Earth this whole time. Like, what do you make of that specific usage of the Statue of Liberty as the signaling point? Like, it could have been anything, you know, but I feel like Statue of Liberty is very, very pointed in its selection there.
Well, I'm interested to hear what you would say, and maybe what the others have to say about that. But I don't know if I took it too much that way. I mean, he was from America, presumably, and the Statue of Liberty is pretty much as iconic as anything would be from America. Versus, I mean, maybe the Golden Gate Bridge. But
Let the Canadian chime in here
the
with this.
distinctiveness of how that would.
The Statue of Liberty, yes. If you're a non-American, the Statue of Liberty is pretty recognizable.
Well, yeah, obviously, but I mean, it doesn't matter where you're from. But I don't know. I think they just wanted to pick. I mean, it could have been the Eiffel Tower, and obviously everyone knows what the Eiffel Tower is too. Maybe there's some symbolism there that I'm not really picking up on, but for me, it was just an iconic thing. And since the group seemed to be from America, they just picked an American-based icon. I don't know.
Bob, do you make anything of it?
Well, I do, but it's specific to, like, the original screenplay was written by Rod Serling, and it's vastly different. This whole movie is vastly different than the original novel, and he's the one that kind of introduced the twist at the end that it was always Earth, because that's not in the book. And you know, there's some discussion about who actually decided that it was going to be the Statue of Liberty or whatever. But if it was his specific idea, Serling never did anything like that without some kind of undercurrent of meaning. And so whatever that might have been, we can't really say. But if it was Serling, then I would have to look at it and say, you know, maybe he was talking about this world is a place where the refugees from man's folly, which are the apes, have been welcomed. You know, they're the ones coming to a new world to start anew. So it's like a symbol of a part of humanity that is not prevalent in this movie. We're mostly getting to see the bad parts of humanity. So it's kind of a reminder that there are human ideals that could live on after humans' bad sides take over and ruin things. So yeah. I think that it's purposeful, and if it's not purposeful, then it should be.
Duke, do you think that there's any purpose to that specific choice of like what landmark to use?
Yeah, the Statue of Liberty is just iconic. As an American, it's that. Mount Rushmore would be the main two, I would say, as a non-American. Jumping off why it wouldn't be the Eiffel Tower that Jacob suggested could have been an option. Just it's an American film, and Americans are always going to cater to the American audience, and they were from America as well, so it would be something from there instead of though the Eiffel Tower would have been nice, since I believe the author is French. So
that is correct.
And maybe, you know, maybe too, if you know this was made with Hollywood and American audiences in mind, you know, maybe there's a part of it that I want to deliver specifically to, hey, you know, the way Americans are acting, not just, you know, if it's in Paris, you're more of the whole humanity, and it's still all of humanity, obviously. But, you know, putting it as the Statue of Liberty, it's kind of like, yeah, you know, the way Americans are moving forward as well. Kind of adds a little to the directness.
Yeah.
You know?
I think
It's
you needed something that would be recognizable worldwide. I don't know if they released this worldwide because it was the 60s, but the international movie market wasn't as big as it was now. But I think the Statue of Liberty would be something that would be recognizable around the world too, which is what you want. You need something that is going to immediately let the audiences know that this is Earth and not a different planet. So,
And of course, the Statue of Liberty is a gift from the French as well. So that's a
I do think we're reading too much into why the Statue of Liberty was chosen. we're trying our damnedest to tie it to back to the origins of it being a French.
You know, if they made
written-
this in the 80s, it would have been like the golden arches of a McDonald's.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm sure Family Guy or somebody's probably parodied that with McDonald's
well, I mean,
or something.
Bob, that's kind of an interesting point, right? Because like what the '80s were in terms of like the like economic growth and like brand names being sort of like more ubiquitous than they were in the past. But in the 60s, in 1968 in the US, like we were struggling a lot with understanding like our civil liberties and not so much our place within the world, but like our relationship to one another, to other Americans. There were like all of these movements that were about liberating all these groups that previously, maybe didn't have the same kinds of freedoms as other groups. And the Statue of Liberty like represents the best in humanity. Yes, it is a extremely recognizable landmark that we all understand to be like uniquely of this earth. Like you could build you could build the Eiffel Tower anywhere, right? If you go to another planet, they could very easily have their own Eiffel Tower. There's nothing like that uniquely human about it. Whereas the Statue of Liberty represents the best in humanity in a lot of ways. And the fact that that is what is seen in this like post-apocalyptic destructive manner of humanity. Like we literally destroyed the best in us. And that's what allowed for this ape world to become what it is. So Duke, I totally get where it's like, okay, you pick that because it's instantly recognizable. But then Bob, to a lot of what you're saying, like there's got to be some sort of deeper meaning to that because this movie is so pointed in a lot of its messaging. Like it isn't just like sci-fi entertainment for the sake of sci-fi entertainment. It's very much so a movie that's using the sci-fi genre to hold up a mirror to society as it existed when the movie was made, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree.
So I think I want to put a pin in that portion, like the holding up a mirror portion, and go back to what we were talking about with like the initial expedition, just because it was like kind of unclear to me. Was there a sort of stated purpose for why they were going on this journey? Or was it just like astronauts doing astronaut shit?
I swear it was astronauts doing astronaut shit. This was, of course, before even they landed on the moon, so just space race, I believe.
He was
I
watched
could
it
buy
most
that.
recently.
I watched it today, and I swear I do not remember them saying anything about their purpose beyond space exploration.
I wish I had taken more. I've got a little notebook out to take notes.
But Jacob's right about him saying that she's supposed to be the Eve for
I
their.
don't remember that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because then he follows it up with one of the many kind of sexist lines, which is like, and we were to be her atoms, hot and ready, something like that. It's like, like, and they kind of did this backwards, like, right? If it's going to be three guys and one woman, it seems not smart.
Yeah, I did think when I was watching, I was like, why is there not two women at least? Because that's just going to get a bit web feedy.
A bit of a creepy-ish line that
Yes.
sticks out. So, but yeah, the purpose was to colonize someplace, and then early on when they're trying to figure out where they are, Charlton Heston is kind of like, we're on the third rock from Orion's star or whatever. So he thought that they had just crashed somewhere near their destination. So they definitely were not expecting to somehow end up back on Earth.
No. This is complete aside, but it just struck me this last time. So you're right. He says in Orion's Bellatrix system is the name of the system that they're supposed to go. And I was like, Bellatrix system? That's reminds me of Bellatrix Lestrange, who was played by Helena Bonham Carter, who played Zira in the remake of Planet of the Apes. It's just weird to me. Yeah.
Look at these parallels.
It's a vast conspiracy.
Yep. Anyway, sorry.
So it's kind of unclear as to why they're going on this exploration. It's maybe to colonize another planet. Do we think then that like the fear is that humans are going to destroy Earth? Because then that kind of ties in with the end where he's like, "You madmen or whatever, you're all mad. You actually did it." And Jacob, going into what you're saying before about his like journaling in the opening scene of the movie where he seems sort of down on humanity as a whole and like the direction that it's heading in. I don't know if I don't think I had an actual question from that.
No, I got you.
But
So they leave the Earth in 1972. It's on the dashboard. It's one of the few things I did write down. And so I think it's just based on the general. I think it's based on the general strife and problems of the time. Nothing. I think it's very, very near future technically when they leave. So but as far as his outlook on humanity, I think the expedition was one of those ideas that we had then and still have today of this colonization, whether it's to Mars or to further out. It's just a one-way trip expedition to discover new planets and see if they're inhabitable and colonize them. It's really just an excuse to kind of get the plot going. I don't think there was any additional concerns, other than the Cold War that was actually going on at the time.
Mm-hmm. So once we get the expedition actually going, we get our main character off Earth. We get him on this ape planet. It does take a little bit of time before we actually meet the apes of said planet. What did you guys? I know you guys spoke about it a little bit before, but what do you guys make of like? Before we get into like the ape makeup, just the ape society as it's presented within the movie. Duke, what did you think about how all of that is set up? Like our introduction to some of the ape characters. What did you make of all of that?
It's interesting because this is something I'm also thinking about with the new Planet of the Apes movie that's coming out, is that the civilization doesn't look like it evolves very much after the apes would have taken over. They've been around for hundreds of years, and they have weapons, but the society is very much still, their houses are made out of rock, but they have fine leather clothing. It's almost Flintstonian in the sense that it's Stone Age, but then there's also modern stuff kind of thrown in, but twisted to be kind of prehistoric. It's
I think you just coined the term Flintstonian.
Flintstonian.
As I said that, I thought that sounds right. That just sounds like it should be a word.
No, that sounds amazing. That sounds like something that would be coined in like an academic paper.
Yeah, something like it's an interesting, like you see I think the scarecrows are kind of cool that you see ahead of time, like because like if you, of course I was thinking like, oh, if you didn't know that it's a Planet of Apes, but that's the title, so of course you would, because from a distance you might not recognize that it's an ape. What I'm meaning is if there's apes on the planet, the scarecrows look like apes. If you don't know it, they can just, they just look like weird scarecrows or X's. So, it's the ape society is very advanced but also primitive, if that makes sense. Flintstonian,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
I said. It's
Well, there.
there's religion and there's, government, but then I don't know, it's just like, but as we find out with the orange guy who's Zaius, I'm gonna call him Dr.
Dr.
Zaius.
Zaius.
Dr. Zaius, apologies. I guess there is some people, I guess, the government is trying to prevent the evolution, it seems. It's
Yeah.
preventing kind of, going forward. So they're kind of stuck in this midpoint.
Damn,
Yeah.
it's almost like reductive, or not reductive, like regressive politics, like aren't that great for the greater good of the ape people. I wonder if the film is in part doing commentary on that. Sorry, Bob. I think
No, that's good. I would like for that to be the case, but there's a more straightforward explanation because the script wants them to be an advanced race that has brain surgery and museums and advanced industry, but the budget dictated that they had to have this much smaller, because the original screenplay, they had cities, they had vehicles and machinery, and it was a very advanced civilization. And then they cut the budget in half to make the film, and they really only did the most basic of tweaks to the script in order to get it to justify what you see, which I love that Flintstonian word. Because it's perfect, it's a Stone Age science sort of look to everything, which contributes to the uniqueness of the film, but it's purely budgetary.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those happy accidents where it would have been cool to see a version of this movie where it is a super advanced civilization, but there's something about the Flintstonian vibe to it that really makes it, I think, a lot more sinister in a lot of the ways that it actually reads. Jacob, what did you think of the whole ape civilization and like how we're introduced to all the characters and stuff?
Well, I think too, to answer your question, kind of where you were going at the beginning, was that there's like this whole 30-minute chunk of the movie where they haven't even encountered the apes yet, and I think that kind of is a nice setup to the flow. Even though, I mean, it's not a twist even for the people watching it. It was called Planet of the Apes. Obviously, they were coming, but giving them some time to wander around the planet, not knowing exactly where they were, and kind of figure each other out a bit. It gives, although some of that's wasted because two of the guys you figure out about are but it gives you some insight, into Charlton Heston's character before he gets plunged into this crazy world. But I think the civilization of the apes really did work out well, because I think having that mix, I mean, the religious and scientific aspects are very kind of, I mean, they're perennial, but they also are kind of very much like the time of like, I'm not that great with history, I'm gonna get mixed up here, but like the Inquisition or whatever, when like Galileo was like,
Right.
feathers and boulders fall at the same rate, and the Catholic Church was like, no, stop. So like, I mean, it sort of has that kind of vibe of this, somewhat advanced, but kind of regressive battle between religion and science, and how that kind of plays out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's like one of the big themes of the movie. We can just start getting into some of those, but Jacob, do you have anything else on the faith versus science aspect of it specifically?
Well, I mean, if we're going to start transitioning into the themes, that's a good, I mean, I was really intrigued, and I had to look up some of this because, in 1968, I wasn't sure what the climate was like in terms of, this movie talks a whole lot about evolution, and is really kind of seems critical of religion, even though there's a little bit of a difference there. But I was curious if this caused like a huge uproar, and I was doing some looking at it today and realized that the Scopes monkey trial about whether they could teach evolution in schools was back in 1925, and actually, I guess
Mhm.
right around 1968, the battle over evolution in schools had really just kind of died down to maybe its lowest point right there in the 60s. So I found that to be kind of an interesting deal, considering how much this movie really kind of explores those kind of themes.
Yeah. Bob, I mean, I'm not throwing this question to you because you're our oldest member of the panel right now, but the sort of to what Jacob was saying, like the movie is really focused on, like, my biggest takeaway thematically from this movie was the faith versus religion aspect of it, but that was very much so not something that was at the front of the minds of Americans in 1960s, 1968 specifically. Like there were so many other sort of culture war issues that were being discussed in like the popular discourse. Like, do you think it's weird that faith versus science like makes such a prominent has such a prominent presence within this movie when like there were so many other things that Americans were thinking about at the time of this movie's release?
To be clear, I was not alive when the movie came out.
Yeah.
I'm not
Again, I wasn't
Not
asking
that-
the question because
yeah.
I thought that you were alive in
No.
the 60s, but just like from what we know of the time period from, history books and whatever.
Well, I think, what we had at that point in time was an upheaval in social structures, in that the civil rights movement was really getting going, and women's lib was just getting started, and it was a societal upheaval that was opposed by the status quo. And status quo has often used religion as a backstop for, why things should not be done. Progress should not be made because we've always done it this way, and this book says that we should always do it this way. And as a little kid watching this film, I had very much bought into at school the whole separation of church and state thing. And this movie was like, and this is why that's important. You don't make the head scientist also the defender of the faith, because those two things are two great tastes that do not go together. And this movie, kind of made that point about these are things. If you're too much of a scientist, you're not going to listen to what people's faith is telling them. But if you're too much of a priest, you're not going to listen to what science is telling you, whether it's right or wrong, because it goes against what you believe. I think those things are universal. And even though evolution was kind of decided by the point that this movie came out, there are other conflicts between science and faith that are always present, including today.
Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like a lot of maybe not, well, yeah, more recent. So like earlier this season, we did an episode on Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And in that episode, we also spoke about Signs. And those are kind of movies where like science fiction is used as like a great expression of faith, and how like these great scientific happenings like can really like reinforce our faith. But this movie really is like pitting the two against each other. Duke, do you think there's anything to like the way that this movie sort of like, do you think that this movie is saying anything about how faith can be weaponized to like control people? Because Dr. What was the name? Zyrus. Too many of their names begin with Z. That's my
Zaius.
Zaius,
Dr.
yes.
Zaius. And Zira is the scientist who is helping him, right?
Yes, the one not helping Zaius, but helping Taylor.
Helping Taylor, yeah, our main character. So Dr. Zaius, like he's like weaponizing the ape faith to like control the apes and not allow them to, you know, go into the forbidden zone and things like that. Like, Duke, what did you make of that whole aspect of the movie?
I don't know if I see it quite like that. If the movie I think was trying to say that, I think there'd be a reason why they shouldn't go into the forbidden zone. Whereas we learn it's just why is it called the forbidden zone? They say, I don't know. It's more, I don't know if it's more faith, is more just, I don't know if ignorance is the right word, or just lack of caring. It's
Mm-hmm.
which you could argue is for a lot of stuff beyond just faith, is the idea that we just follow along like, what is it, lemmings? You know,
Yeah.
this idea that we
Yeah.
don't really, because really it's only most of the ape population besides what's Zira's husband, Cornelius, right?
Yeah.
A lot of C words in the Planet of the Apes franchise too.
All these
He
C's
seems to
and
be like
Z's.
C's
Pick
and
a new
Z's
letter.
and Nova, and that's the only normal name really. You know, there's like some people who seem to be, well, I guess it also that we on our end we don't really, there's like five apes that we actually kind of get to know. It's like Zira, Zaius, Cornelius's or Zira's nephew. I never remember
Lucius.
who he belongs to. His name's Lucius.
Yeah, Lucius. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So there's four, and then you know there's like two more identical orange apes that are like interchangeable. And then there's like that one guard that we see get knocked out a couple times or whatever. So we don't really learn it. Like it's like Cornelius who kind of is like the one scientist that really wants to, and Zira. And then do the rest of the apes care? It's hard to say. It's like those two are kind of, if we're going to use the faith argument, those two are kind of challenging the ape faith, but we never really see the other side, whether other people believe it or if everybody's just kind of, you know, they just go along because that's what they've been raised up. Like
Mhm.
Forbidden Zone, yeah, whatever. It doesn't scream faith. It just screams kind of like this is how they were raised. It could just, you know, it's almost like a law. And that more goes into the government side, I'd say. It's just more, you know, following along and doing what you're told as opposed to kind of challenging
Yeah.
the
Well,
system.
that's another big part of the movie. Another big theme is just sort of the idea of like civil disobedience or whatever, and like not just falling in line with the status quo. And like you're saying, Duke, like it doesn't specifically have to be faith, but you know, the fuck, what's his name? Zaius?
Zaius.
We should have gave him
God
just
damn
call him
it.
Orange. Just call him Orange.
It's Hitchcock.
That ginger fuck.
Come on. I take offense to that as a ginger.
But the Zaius character is like really, you know, trying to be controlling over
He's trying his
the
damnedest.
other ape characters. And then you have someone like Lucius, and his whole thing is that he hates authority figures. He hates all adults, whether they're ape or man, you know, because everyone's just getting in the way of what it is that he wants to do. Jacob, what do you think of like the control aspect of Planet of the Apes?
Well, I think the fact that the setup of how Planet of the Apes is done with, you know, you're obviously brought in with the human characters, and obviously we're human, unless we have ape listeners out there. Sorry.
Not yet,
But
Jacob. Maybe in 2,000 years when they're listening.
but you know, you're obviously kind of just naturally predispositioned, even though this is, you know, if you don't know the twist, you know, then you just kind of could go with, hey, this could be another planet where the apes really, you know, whatever happened. But you're just kind of with the human, like, yeah, come on, no, like, there's no way, you know, these apes, this can't all be true. We got to question all this because I mean, look what they don't know and all this stuff, and so I think it kind of brings in people who might normally like dismiss those kinds of rebellious attitudes, but who maybe who are more a little bit more ingrained because they're kind of put in the seat of the outsider. But it brings you along to say, well, we should question that. I mean, that's that doesn't add up. So I think it brings you along nicely.
I don't want to push back against what Duke was saying about that. There's no clear reason for like what the forbidden zone is. I think that moves at what I'm thinking is moves us to a different aspect of the film, and it's how this movie kind of reflects racial tensions in the sense that there is a reason why they don't allow people to go in the forbidden zone. And it's because the forbidden zone contains artifacts of a human civilization that preceded the ape civilization. And Zaius is concerned that if people knew that human beings used to be considered intelligent and in fact perhaps even more advanced than apes were, that throws into question the society that uses excuse me, and demeans human beings as simple animals. So if you have a book or a religion or a creed that requires you to keep another sentient race in a secondary situation in your society, that's, that it requires that, and that your civilization could fall apart if you should ever entertain the notion that another sentient race could be equal to you. That seems like a pretty clear analogy to racial tensions, especially going on in the 1960s. I feel like they missed a chance by having Dodge, who is the only black character. He gets stuffed and put, like, if they had made him the main character, I think those points would have been a lot more pointed. Points pointed. That's
yeah.
Phrase.
But it also is kind of interesting because if you made that change, then it's like a lot more explicit. And this, as it exists, as the film exists in its, actual state, it's maybe a bit more legible, or I don't want to say approachable, but like it's easier to connect to for audiences, white audiences at that time. But like, it is really interesting because when we talk about movies and we talk about like what their politics are and like what they might be or what they might not be, and how much of it is just like what we project onto it. But movies are always made within very particular historical context, and like Planet of the Apes is a great example of that. The movie as it exists as one that came out in 1968 is very much so a reflection of society at that time. And like if this movie had come out at a different time, then that reflection, that questioning of racial tensions, of the civil rights movement and all that stuff, like, wouldn't necessarily be there. But because it did come out when it came out and was made when it was made, like, even if that stuff wasn't extremely intentional, it's like very much so there. Jacob, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, and just like how the movie sort of fits into its historical context of when it was made, when it came out, and all of that.
I'll just add that I don't know if this is maybe strengthens the movie's ideas about humanity, the dark side of humanity, but also maybe goes the other way in terms of this current discussion. But Dr. Zaius at the end says that, basically part of the religion is we got to keep men from evolving because they will just destroy everything. And then you get immediately the Statue of Liberty thing. So it's kind of like, the religion, we're lying to all the people. That's because we can't let anyone evolve because of the bad things that come down the pipe. So
Yeah.
there's like this twofold thing going on there. But I also just wanted to say real quick that when I was rewatching it too, when they first encounter the apes, even though the apes are on horses and have guns and things, there's still like this kind of, old school Western vibe of the tribal, native Indians. Like, you haven't quite breached that yet. But it quickly, I thought it was a good moment. It quickly establishes the apes as not this, tribal, uncultured, which of course would be a very different movie. But I love this part where the three apes are standing there with the humans hanging in the background, and they just are cheesing for a picture and just kind of
Yep.
laughing. Like, that moment just immediately sets you up. Like, oh, nope, yep, they're as smart and as stupid as we are.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez.
That's there's a lot going on in that particular image. I feel like we could spend all day here, but for the sake of self-inflicted time constraints, we'll move on a little bit. And, obviously I'm sure some of this like thematic stuff will pop up more. But Duke, I wanted to ask the question, like, with all of these reflections of society, this exploration of like different anxieties and questions that were popping up in 1960s America, do you think that this movie is ultimately optimistic or pessimistic about like the outlook of humans?
You can't even get that out with a straight face. I mean, oh man, definitely pessimist. Well, it starts optimistic. You got the space exploration, and back then, everybody thought, "Oh, space exploration. This was going to be like the Jetsons almost." Utopian was awaiting. What out there was endless possibilities. By the end of the movie, it's pessimistic. I mean, we find out that Earth has been destroyed. Heavily implied that the humans were responsible for that. And it's hard. And man, then I'm just thinking of the really bad sequel too, but that follows this movie, because it also deals with all this stuff too. But anyway, I won't get into that. But then also, the apes are also pessimistic. Well, I wouldn't say pessimist, sorry. The apes also, the movie also teases that the apes have become just as bad as men and are potentially dooming themselves. And that, I guess, that gets played on more in the sequel, which is like Beneath the Planet of the Apes, I believe. So
That's the first sequel. Yeah.
Yeah, the first, which is really bad. Don't recommend. If you're listening, stop with the first one.
No, go to Escape.
Oh, I quit. I quit after Beneath. But anyway, we digress. Them adding aliens, shock, again, spoilers, terrible decision. But yeah, pessimistic. I just gotta say pessimistic. Even the sequel it further piles on the pessimism. Like, you just can't, there's no turning back, it seems, and there's always gonna be somebody that's gonna ruin it for everybody else. That's why we have this saying, this is why we can't have nice things. There's always going to be somebody who will want to go against the tide, whether for better or for worse. So, no, definitely that ending is just pessimist. I mean, there's no uplifting note. It's like you couldn't get that question even out without kind of chuckling, because I think you knew the answer already. There's nothing fulfilling, or not fulfilling, but there's nothing uplifting, like I said, about that ending. Even if, the potential hope that, okay, maybe Taylor and Nova, where are they going to go? They're going to look for maybe somewhere where the humans are more intelligent. I mean, you got the whole Earth to explore, but then the sequel ruins that if we're going to tie that in. So, yeah, the ending, it's just, I don't know. It's maybe with that realization that the humans were responsible for their downfall, maybe Taylor could then try to kind of, I don't know, rebuild the human society with a more positive look. But again, that doesn't happen. So, yeah, pessimistic. Maybe it's almost like, that 80s movie, The Day After, where it kind of presents what would happen if, a nuclear war did break out, it's like a cautionary tale of what could happen. That's how I would view the end of that movie. It's like a cautionary tale of be careful.
Be careful. Don't do nuclear war because the apes might take over.
Do stop using apes to test your brain enhancing drugs because it will come back to bite us.
Jacob, what are your thoughts on the overall outlook of the movie?
Yeah, well, I think it is pretty obviously pessimistic, and that's really just pretty clearly illustrated from that very beginning speech that launches you into it versus the ending. And like Duke was saying, yeah, I mean it's a cautionary tale. It's a look where mankind is going. I mean, while you're on the ride, while Charlton Heston is trying to find a way to escape and prove that he's smart and all these things, you're kind of rooting for him and all of this stuff. But it's really just to explore that world, to get to that ending, to say, "Yep, that's where humans are going." So
Yeah.
you better cut it out, and then in the meantime, showing you some of those religion versus faith kind of, or faith versus science kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean it's pretty clear, and since we can't recommend it, I'll say it's pretty good follow up to Doctor Strangelove's, the
Yeah.
unrealized prequel to Planet of the Apes is Doctor Strangelove.
Yeah. I also feel like there's a lot of parallels with 2001 and this movie.
Definitely.
But Jacob, my follow-up question is like sort of going back to what we were talking about with this movie existing within a historical context. Like this came out in 1968. Like you said, a few years after Strangelove, same year as Night of the Living Dead, which is also has like a very grim ending. Do you just think that was sort of like the vibe of the era where everyone was like, everything is doomed, we're all fucked, and we're sending everything to shit?
I think there was, a need for the art at the time to communicate a caution, and trying to wake people up and toward acting in a better way. It's the movie is pessimistic, but I don't think the people making it were 100% pessimistic. I think if you're 100% pessimistic, you don't bother making the movie, to warn. I think they had maybe hopes that this could send a message to people. But I think it was a time, it was one of those times in our society where that was so restless, and the art reflects that by trying to warn people off of where this could go.
Yeah. Bob, what do you think about all that? Would you argue the other way? Would you argue that there's any sort of optimism in this movie?
Well, if there is optimism, and I think there is a little bit, but it's on the side of maybe mankind is too screwed up to survive his own disasters, his own urges, but maybe with the apes have just as much of a chance of screwing things up as we do, and we get to see the seeds of that. But then you also have Cornelius and Zira and Lucius, who represent a possible future that is positive. So maybe the apes can break that cycle of, the sequels are pretty much a cycle of humans and apes kind of screwing themselves over as it goes. But in this film, I do think there is that single element of positivity. But like Jacob was saying earlier, I loved that he called Taylor a misanthrope, because that's all I could think when I was watching the film this time. He's obviously a guy that starts out the movie questioning humanity and whether it's useful at all. And I thought, once again, the people who put this expedition together are just the stupidest people, because you put this guy in charge of an expedition that's supposed to be like representative of the best of mankind, and he's like laughing at people, stuffing lit cigars into his pockets, and overacting like crazy.
All right, finally, we're talking about Heston.
And he's a guy. Let's be clear. He's a guy we all root for. We come to want him to survive and be successful in his either proving that he's intelligent or escaping from this world that he's found himself in. But he's also a guy who couldn't find the right woman on Earth, finds the right woman on the planet, and it's because she can't talk to him. So, there's, well, I say because, but it seems suspect to me.
Yeah.
He's overacting, like you were saying there, Bob. Like he's chewing that scenery.
He doesn't move his lip. He doesn't move his teeth when he talks.
It almost looks like ADR work after, like he's dubbing it in after. Like you're watching it like that. He sounds so, but then he's also kind of like the biggest asshole at the beginning to like that one guy.
Yeah.
Who, like, he's like, everybody that you cared for is dead. And then he laughs a bit. And then he laughs when he puts the other guy puts the little American flag in the soil. And then it like closes in on him. It's just like, if there's out of the three astronauts, if there's one of them who I think has already lost it, it's Heston. Like he's the one that looks like he's already had a mental breakdown. He's just delusional, it seems like at times. But I guess that's just how he chose to portray him.
None of them are geniuses. I mean, they're three scientists. They find the first sign of life on the planet that it could be the only life on the planet for all they know. What do? They pull it out of the ground. They're not even like taking samples or anything.
Where there's one, there's two, there's three. The first is a gimme. There's always more.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of just goes to like the movie's outlook on humanity. Like we are only there to destroy all living things in our pathway. But yeah, I mean, he's kind of an ass like throughout the entire movie. So it does become weird that he's a character who we root for. We're sort of like forced to align ourselves with this really cynical guy, this misanthrope who like, like there's no, in any other movie, we would not be rooting for this guy at all, but we're kind of like forced to, even when we meet some ape characters who are like probably more deserving of our sympathies, but like because we've already spent so much time with him, he's the one who we identify with. It's kind of a weird like exercise in storytelling and like developing a protagonist in that regard.
It works. It's weird that it works, but you do come to root for him.
Yeah.
Maybe because he's the only talking male human character.
Yeah. Nobody likes to, we don't want to see a fellow human get their brain taken out. I think that's why we're rooting for him. It's like we don't want, because that's the only human really that we can kind of relate to, and then they're gonna do all these bad things to him. It's like, no, escape.
I will. So I'll defend the moment of the laugh when the guy's putting his little American flag in the pile of rocks. I mean, the laugh itself is so overacted, and obviously it's a meme now. It's so funny, but here's this guy. They've been off Earth at this point. It's like 2,000 years, and this little American flag up, as if the country is anything the same as when they left it, or who knows whether it exists, or obviously it doesn't, as we come to learn. But I think there's a bit of humor in that for sure. And also, some of that character stuff, even though he's being this kind of a-hole, at the same time, he's kind of just needling this guy who, it is kind of weird. He went on this expedition to go away from everything. And it's just one of those, it's this whole ordeal of the misanthrope in him. of, oh yeah, you were like the high school quarterback and you were the All-American guy, so when they offered you up on this mission, you just had to accept it. Imagine accepting a one-way ticket to space just because of your reputation. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
I will say
Yeah.
too, Heston overacts the entire movie, except I really love his monologue at the very beginning in the ship. He's pretty cool smoking that cigar and talking to himself, and then but then yeah, the overacting starts really, really bad after that.
But he makes it. He makes that movie because, like, he's the only thing I think making this movie kind of a classic. Like, you got the makeup effect, sure, but if you had like a true B or C list actor instead of like this award-winning and nominated actor, I just don't think, like, he's overacting, but he's the glue that's kind of making this whole movie work. I think in the end, he's the star that's given it the eyes and has made it kind of this franchise that it is. I think a lot of it does have to you owe to Heston.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the two great lines, two very iconic lines. What do you guys think of like the very literal point of him losing his voice, and then his first line being, the first of those, or his first line uttered to Apes being the first of those two super iconic line reads?
It's interesting because we just spent that whole conversation about faith, government, what you believe, what you're told to believe. And here he is uttering, he's speaking in front of not just, Zaius and those four other main apes, but, there's public ape civilians, and they've heard him speak and everybody's shocked. But then, like, how do you go from there? Because I guess they're going to gaslight everybody into saying, oh, no, apes are still dumb. You didn't hear that. It does kind of, it should be this bigger issue, but outside of the main characters, again, like they start gaslighting him right away, saying, oh, you guys experimented on him to speak, and then he can't think for himself or something. And so him talking should be it should be a bigger issue, and the movie makes it seem like it should be a big issue, but then it's not really a big issue. If you know what I'm kind of laying down here, like,
Yeah.
it's quickly there's really no exploring them talking, and this idea is almost reversed because I also watched Rise of the Planet of the Apes after watching the originals, and I forgot that Caesar spoke in Rise, and when he says no to the ape trainers, like, that just has like way more of an impact just watching, because it feels more, I don't know, impactful in the sense that, I don't know, the apes feel like the humans can talk, but they've never heard it, where, of course, we know apes can't talk, so seeing the ape talk and Rise, it has, I feel, more of a shock value, and then it actually builds off of him being able to talk, and then the whole apes are, have rapidly evolved, where in the 1968 film we're talking about, again, they just kind of shove them behind closed doors and then just gaslighting them to basically this being an outlier. Like, oh, he's the only one that can do this. Even though we learn later, Zaius is aware that if there's one talking man, more will be soon behind him, or something will follow. So yeah, I don't know. It doesn't. I've spoken too long, but it doesn't. I feel like they could have done a bit more. I had to, Raph. I was like, oh, Raph hasn't played with his soundboard yet today, so I better ramble a bit.
No, that wasn't too much rambling. I think you were making a lot of really good points. Bob, Jacob, I don't know if you guys have anything else on the losing of the voice, him speaking in front of apes for the first time.
No, not really. No, not really. I think it just was necessary to move the plot along, mostly to have the Zira and Cornelius' character have to kind of take some time to discover, oh, this, not only is he different, he's really, really different and can communicate. I think that was really just a and to add some desperation to, obviously, just like kind of a plot device. I mean, they shoot him in the. I was kind of surprised the way when he gets shot in the neck. I mean, it looks like a kill shot.
Well,
Yeah.
considering his the other astronaut got shot in the neck and then died,
Yeah.
and
It's
then
just,
mummified or not mummified, taxidermied.
when I first saw him, rewatched it and saw him get shot in the neck, I was like, oh man, I forgot he got just. I mean, straight up shot in the neck. How does he? Oh, he just survives. Okay.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually think Jacob's right in that they just did it for plot reasons, but
Mhm.
you can read into the moment. I mean, he spends that whole time trying to communicate and not being able to, even trying to steal pen and paper to write to Zero, writing in the dirt, and that gets messed up. It's you can read into it if you want to that it's an oppressed culture that has no voice. And then when he does get his voice, the first lines that he says are, and pardon the phrase in this context, but they're dehumanizing words. You get your dirty paws off me, you damn, your filthy paws off me, you damn dirty ape. Those are that's the scream of a man who is angry and frustrated and scared, and his first reaction is to lash out. So
Mhm.
you can read it that way if you want, but I do think that it just boils down to, well, we need to pad this out so that they know he's immediately different from the others.
Yeah. Another happy accident.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it worked out. Okay, I think we spoke about it on the front end, but I don't know if you guys want to say anything else about the makeup that's done in this movie. The work is super, super impressive. So I feel like we should allow some time for that. If you guys have any additional thoughts that you wanted to add about the specific, makeup design of the ape characters.
Yeah, as Duke was saying earlier, it's amazing work by John Chambers, who I think he mentioned that he created Spock's ears, and I think I said maybe before we recorded that it's just uncanny valley enough that when they first start talking, and it's awkward with the way that their mouths don't quite match the words that are coming out. At first, you're kind of dismayed by that, but because the actors do such a good job, and I just want to shout out Roddy McDowell for doing a great job as that character. He was always my favorite character in the movie. Actually, it stops being a thing; it becomes a background thing, and they just become characters. Then that is a credit to the work of Chambers in creating these masks that allow just enough emotion to come through, and enough individuality, especially you've got the great apes, the orangutans, and the chimpanzees in their own kind of stratified society as well.
Yeah.
Done extremely well. And the costume design too. Pretty damn fantastic.
Absolutely. Those orangutans, they're sick bastards, huh? Duke, did you have anything else on the makeup, costume design?
No, except I was looking at my written Canon while we were talking earlier, kind of just staring at one of the images and then of the apes, and I was like, oh, the reason they have full body wardrobes, which I think kind of look like King the Conqueror's outfit in the comics, is because so they don't have to put ape makeup on.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I came to that conclusion myself. I was just like, oh yeah. Never really thought. It was only because I was staring at that image while we were talking. I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Otherwise, it's just like that explains why they have such nice clothing. I guess this Flintstonian,
Flintstonian.
This Flintstonian,
it all comes back to that
fancy-ass
Flintstonian
clothing.
aspect. Yeah. Jacob, what about you? Did you have additional makeup and costume thoughts?
No, I don't think I do. I think that some of the cinematography being so nice throughout some of the rest of the movie also just kind of makes you take it seriously. And then when you it is, and it would have been, I guess, less jarring back then, obviously, but now, even if it's a little jarring when the apes first show up, you really do kind of just get over it because the rest of the movie looks very, very nice, and the costumes work well enough, and you start to just get used to it and accept it. It's kind of like if you're watching a stage play where there's limitations, you just roll with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the world is established, and then it just sort of goes from there, and you never think about it again. The last thing I will say, super quick, I don't have any major thoughts on it, but the score is like pretty bonkers in a really amazing way.
Yes.
That's
It's
Jerry
really creative,
Goldsmith.
inventive. Can you remind us who that is?
Yeah. Bob, you're acting like this should be somebody we're all familiar with.
Jerry Goldsmith did like so like he did scores for Star Trek. He did the score for the Star Trek the Motion Picture and a bunch of the others. He did Outland, The Omen. He did the score for The Secret of Nim. He did he did a whole bunch of stuff. First Blood, the Rambo movie. So he's a very well-known composer. Gremlins.
Nice.
LA Confidential.
Of course.
So yeah, he's one of the big composers. It's just not as famous as some, but apparently.
We apologize then, Jerry. I was going to mention if we had just a random thoughts at the end, was that when they zoom in on like what's her name, Eve? I'm going to call her Eve because I can't remember what her name actually is. No. Eve, like the woman who dies in the space.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Spacey. They zoom in on the body. It's got like that, like wonky horror. That you see in all the old, like, I want to say cartoons of that era. It's like wah 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 wah. So it's like dun dun dun. Like there's something like that you're watching. It's just like, oh my god, this is so like so 60s, so 70s. Like so. And even somewhere else, like earlier in that movie, there's just like some music that would just not fly in today's movies, So yeah, like very interesting music choices that are fun to watch now, and just think that, oh yeah, like you'd get laughed at if you tried to do that now, like intentionally, unironically, I should say.
Right.
Interesting. I mean, that kind of sucks because this score is like, it's really bold. It's really out there. It's like trying interesting stuff. It's not like conventional there are conventional moments in like some of the action sequences in like how the score plays out. But I think for a lot of the movie, they'll play score at really, odd times in the story. It won't always sort of like match what you're seeing on screen. I think it's really cool in a lot of those regards.
No, I agree. He got nominated for Oscar for that score. So
hell yeah, as he should. Absolute legend. Well, do you guys have any other random thoughts?
Let me pull out my notes.
Yeah, I got weird little notes too. So director Franklin Schaeffer goes on to win Oscar for Patton 2 years later.
Nice.
Which is weird, but I mean, just, he did like The Boys from Brazil as well, which makes more sense to me for some reason.
Yeah.
This was also one of the first movies, if not the first movie, that sold action figures as like a merchandising tie-in.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's
and
cool.
It did so well that pretty much every mainstream movie after that did toy tie-ins. So you can kind of thank Planet of the Apes for your 1970s collectible Star Wars toys.
That's pretty cool. I did not know that.
That is a fun fact.
I was going to say that this movie does have a little bit of like the Godzilla effect in terms of like how it was franchised after, obviously not to the same extent. And I haven't seen all of the Godzilla sequels. I haven't seen all of the Planet of the Apes sequels, but there is both have like this really serious, thoughtful first movie about societal issues. And again, I don't know how the other Planet of the Apes movies play, but then, you know, you get just sort of like fun entertainment going forward with, you know, just living within or, you know, going back to sort of the same world. And then you get all these spin-offs and reboots years later, some good, some bad. But I just thought that was kind of interesting in terms of like, you know, you have this like really serious, grounded first movie, and then things get a little wonky down the road.
Yeah, but that nihilism seems to like my favorite of the sequels is Escape from Planet of the Apes, which is Cornelius and Zira find out that the planet's going to explode, so they resurrect Taylor's ship and use it to escape, and then they end up on Earth in the present day, which is of like 1971 or whatever it is.
Interesting.
But that ends with them like having a, you know, sort of the Killers ending where they're both shot and crawling towards each other, bleeding, and you know, it's a very dark ending.
Yeah.
None of the movies are particularly positive in that kind of way. But I have no idea where I was going with that.
Well, okay, that takes me to sort of the last question that I wanted to ask before we do recommendations. And I want to keep it brief. But whenever we do talk about a movie like Planet of the Apes that has spawned an insane franchise after, I want to do like 30 seconds each of what your thoughts are on the subsequent movies and you know, the reboots and all that stuff. So Bob, I'll go to you first for this one.
All right, well, I haven't seen I haven't seen War for the Planet of the Apes of the new series. I've not heard good things, but I kind of want to see it before I see Kingdom. Anyway, I've liked the new reboot series. The Rise and Dawn were both extremely well done, and an interesting take that's not just retreading things. I actually just bought for $1 the Tim Burton remake, which is
I'd buy that for $1.
Exactly.
That's in the canon. That should be on the soundboard too.
Soundboard, yeah.
That should be on the soundboard. But that's not a very good movie. But I do like the makeup effects.
Oh, yeah, really
that.
good in those.
So, and yeah, I've seen all of the original sequels, and they are an exercise in diminishing returns. But anything with Roddy McDowall in it, I'll watch. So that's the first one: Escape, Conquest, and Battle for the Planet of the Apes.
Sweet.
Oh, and just there was a cartoon as well in the 1970s, and a TV show with Roddy McDowall, which is weird. But anyway, those were
a live action TV show.
Yeah, a live action TV show.
Wow,
so,
they went for it.
Yep, I've never seen that in one of those. Nobody's collected that in a box set that you can buy in physical media yet.
We need that. We absolutely need it. All right, Duke, I feel like you're anxious to share your thoughts about the subsequent ones.
I'll do a quick rundown. Planet of the Apes, great. Beneath the Planet of the Apes, which is the sequel to this, whatever. Charlton Heston didn't want to come back, so then they write him out, but then he comes back at the end anyway. So now they introduce a different character, and it's just whatever. There's aliens, the whole planet blows up. It's spoilers, sorry guys. Reboot series is what I first watched. Rise, which I watched again after watching Planet of the Apes, I think is actually better than this movie. This movie has more of a impact on Hollywood makeup. We've talked about that. Listen to what we just said. But Rise, I just think, I don't know, it
Listen
builds
to the
like
podcast that you're listening to right
yeah,
now.
it builds off of this. Like it just, it just works so good. And there's parallels. And I'm gonna watch Dawn. I haven't watched Dawn since it hit theaters. That was really good, I remember. And then I'm gonna watch War. I haven't seen it like Bob, but yeah, I mean, I don't know who was telling me that it didn't get good or it's not as good, but 94% Rotten Tomatoes, best of the reboot trilogy, A- cinema score, same with the other two. So I'm thinking it'll be good. And then, yeah, I'm going to be seated for Kingdom this summer. And I did watch Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes remake last August, and it's okay. It's got some ideas I don't mind, but it's, yeah, not as good as the original or the reboot. It's just kind of, it exists. So, yeah, that's kind of my thoughts.
Nice. And Jacob, what are your thoughts on subsequent films and franchise as a whole?
So I own the original sequels because I bought a box pack to watch them, but I've only watched the original out of those, so I can't say anything about the original sequels. But I also haven't seen Tim Burton. I watched the reboot series, or at least Rise and Dawn, before watching this one, and I think that Dawn is far and away the best movie of the entire franchise. Dawn is an incredible movie to me. This sort of nuances between these two different societies and just the little bits of communication and all these factors that come into play that start this war. And I know, Raph, I know that you've seen War and not Dawn, and that you don't like War. And I would kind of agree that War is at the very least a letdown, and it doesn't really fit the trilogy that well. But Dawn is incredible. Rise is super, super solid, and the trailer for Kingdom looks great. So I'm excited.
Which one is which? Dawn is first, and then Rise, and then War.
No, it's Rise, Dawn, then War. Somebody said that it's, if you can go back and retile it. Dawn does come before the Rise or something, but it goes Rise, Dawn, then War.
Yeah, Dawn is the second. Dawn is the middle piece.
Okay.
Dawn is amazing. Dawn is also like
Okay.
the one that made it's like the X-Men Days of Future Past of the franchise, where it made like significantly more money than any installment before it or after it so far. So like twice as much as the other two in the reboot
Cool.
franchise. So
Yeah, maybe I'll check that one out. I remember liking Rise. I thought War was horrific. I thought
I
it
can't
was
believe
like,
you saw War without seeing Dawn.
yeah. I mean,
Like you saw Rise and then you skipped for War. It's, huh.
yeah. I don't know.
I'll say if any film from the reboot should be in the canon, I would say Dawn should be in the canon, because it's just, damn, is it doing an action sci-fi sequel right? Doesn't get better than that. Matt Reeves.
It's absolutely incredible. I second, if we ever add it to the canon, that's definitely the movie from the reboot series to make it.
And if I had, done the planning for this season a little bit better, this episode would have come out around the same time as Kingdom of Plapes. But I totally dropped the ball on that. I forgot that it was coming out. But now you have, like a month to listen to this, to watch all the other Planet of the Apes, to watch the original Planet of the Apes, and then go see Kingdom. Or maybe you saw Kingdom and you decided to go back to the original, and now you're listening to this. Either way, it works out. So we're happy. Duke, Bob, Jacob, thank you guys. This discussion has been incredible. Another amazing episode for another amazing movie, an essential movie. Before we get out of here, let's do our recommendations.
All right.
Everybody like that. So just in case we have any new listeners out there, for each movie that we introduce into the canon, we also recommend 3 things each to check out if you like said movie. For those 3 things, at least one of them has to be another movie. but the other two things can be any and everything in the world. And the connections to the movie of the day can be as loose or as on the nose as possible. The other two recommendations, the non-movie ones, they can be more movies. It can be a book. It can be a TV show. It could be a comic book series. It could be a recipe. We like to get really weird. We like to get really creative with it. So yeah, let's jump into it. For the order, we'll do Bob, Duke, Jacob, Raph. I think that's alphabetical order. And then we'll each give a brief description for why we're recommending what we're recommending. And then, kick it over to the next person. So Bob, whenever you're ready.
Alrighty. So I have 2 TV recommendations and 1 movie recommendation. I'm going to start off with a recommendation that's a little tangential, but also directly related in a couple of weird ways to Planet of the Apes. So the direct connection, one of the direct connections, is that it was created by one of the screenwriters, talking about the Twilight Zone television series, aired from 1959 to 1964, was created by Rod Serling, who wrote the first draft of the screenplay for Planet of the Apes. Specifically, I'm recommending an episode from season 1 called I Shot an Arrow into the Air. That finds a group of astronauts that crashed their ship on a desert planet. And over the course of the film, the episode, they turn on each other over lots of different human-related issues like leadership and such. And in the end, there's only one of them that manages to survive, and he drags himself up over one of the dunes in the desert to find that he's about an hour outside of Reno, Nevada.
Oh no.
Yeah, so it was Earth the whole time. So yeah, that's from a 1959 episode of The Twilight Zone. Seems like maybe Serling recycled a little bit of that into the ending of Planet of the Apes. So good episode.
Bob, I had The Twilight Zone as one of my recommendations.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But it's okay. I have backups. I'm glad you picked it. I absolutely adore The Twilight Zone.
Oh, me too, man.
It's so good. So good. I got really into it in college. And like, I've loved it ever since.
Raph, were you aware of that episode that Bob was talking about?
I don't know if I've seen that episode.
So this is really funny because unless Duke chimes in and agrees, so that's 3 of us that we're going to have the Twilight Zone.
I did not have the Twilight Zone. Sorry, guys.
There we go. Well, I mean, it's just great because, I mean, really, Planet of the Apes, what is it but a 2-hour Twilight Zone episode?
Right.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
It's really fitting. But to go even further, Bob, when I was researching just to see about something with the Twilight Zone in relation to this movie, I discovered that episode. So I was prepared to enlighten everybody about this very similar episode of Twilight Zone of Planet of the Apes. But I'm glad that you beat me to the punch there, and I have a backup as well. So
Okay, good, because I feel like every episode that I'm on with you, your choices get stepped on. So I'm glad you have a backup.
It's a running theme. It's kind of fun though.
I'm glad that we all were thinking with the really obvious choice, but like the Twilight Zone is so good that it had to be recommended for this episode. So
it is kind of the only thing that just directly compares to Planet of the Apes. I mean, I tried to think of a lot of things, and I'm like, man, there's just no getting around. This is just a really good long Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
yeah, it's amazing. Well, great first pick, Bob. Duke, over to you.
I love how you guys were all thinking, oh, Twilight Zone, yeah. And over here, I'm thinking, Curious George. That'd be a great first record. That's the first thing that popped in my mind. Specifically, the 2006 animated Curious George film, which I saw in theaters. If my adolescent memory is correct, or my recollection of my adolescent memory. I was trying. Oh man, I struggled with these recommendations. I really wanted like another monkey movie, but didn't want to do Kong, and all the other options seemed kind of dumb. And I was going to be cheeky and do 12 Monkeys, since it had just monkeys in the title, but it's about time travel, and Planet of the Apes is kind of time travel. But anyway, pick Curious George because that's a monkey that's curious and is almost human-like. And who doesn't like Curious George? So, and Will Ferrell voices the man in the yellow hat. So, come on. Curious George, 2006. Keep it simple. It's a fun movie.
I love it. Great pick. Great pick, Duke. Jacob, what do you got?
So my first pick is another movie in which a science experiment drastically changes the lives of 4 individuals. Of course, I'm talking about Josh Trank's Fantastic Four. I don't know how many times I can get away with that.
Amazing. That's
All the
incredible work,
times.
Jacob. Yeah.
But okay, for real, I'm gonna start. I'm gonna start with one I don't think anyone else will have picked. If you really like the first 30 minutes of Planet of the Apes, where it's just 3 dudes walking through like a deserty area, just kind of figuring each other out, you might like Bone Tomahawk.
Nice.
Oh, boy.
Great connection.
So, Bone Tomahawk, a great modern Western movie. You got Kurt Russell. Who's the name? I don't remember who played Hickory. Hickory's a great character. But anyway, you got these 4 guys walking through the desert trying to go save some of their wives that have been captured by a group of Indians, but they're different. They're kind of more animalistic. Anyway, and so they eventually get ambushed by them too. So it kind of plays a little like Planet of the Apes without all the faith versus science sci-fi stuff. But yeah, I love just watching those guys walk through the desert, and it kind of reminded me of that when the astronauts were just strolling along looking for signs of life. So that's my first recommendation.
That's
Nice.
awesome. That
That
surprised the hell out of me.
That's a movie.
I love that connection. That's amazing. That's what it's all about. Love one. It's just like really, really creative how we're tying 2 things together. For my first recommendation, I'm going to go with a book. And part of why I'm recommending this particular book, well, let me do the main reason first. So this is another story about a scientific excursion that an astronaut is sent on, in order to save humanity. I'm just going to assume that the astronauts, that Taylor and his crew, that their goal is to somehow save humanity. That's why they're going to colonize another planet. So a novel about an astronaut who goes out with those hopes, and stumbles across another futuristic species that he develops a connection to. But the other part of the reason why I wanted to recommend this particular novel is because it's like top of mind for me right now. I recently read it, but it was also recently announced that Ryan Gosling has been cast to star in a film version of it that's set to be directed by Lord and Miller. And the novel is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. He's the same dude who wrote The Martian. So
That's
he's like a good name in sci-fi. And there are some ties to Planet of the Apes, but also something that we can look forward to a movie version of within the next 2 years or so.
Very cool. I like that book a lot.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yep.
I don't get to read a lot. I don't read a lot of novels, and I don't read a lot of science fiction novels, but I did enjoy going through Project Hail Mary. So
Yeah.
It's my first pick. Cool.
Nice.
Bob, back to you.
I like it. All right. So my other choices stray further afield. So and my
Sort of Bone Tomahawk.
well, maybe not that far afield. I like Bone Tamagda. This one also features it was released as a film first, but it features a astronaut who ends up, due to a space anomaly, getting thrown 500 years into the future, and he finds a planet Earth that has been ravaged by nuclear war, and tries to figure out how to fit himself into society. Talking course about Buck Rogers in the 25th century,
Nice.
the 1979 original film, rather than the TV series that was inspired by it. It's still full of classic late 70s, early 80s cheesy sci-fi goodness. It's both terrible and awesome in equal measure. Slightly more serious than the TV show. They got to swear a couple of times, but yeah, it's just that for some reason the suits that they wear at the beginning of the of Planet of the Apes reminded me of Buck Rogers, and I was like, oh yeah, there's a little bit of time travel, a little bit of nuclear apocalypse. What the hell?
Yeah.
Let's go with it.
Nice. I love it. That's amazing. I have not seen it, but that's a great pick. Awesome.
All right. Okay, so I had a different pick, but then I just remembered what one of my picks was going to be that I thought up like a long time ago when Raffi first mentioned bringing me on for this episode. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to do my original pick, and that is The Maze Runner. And I'm picking that because Wes Ball directed it, and now of course he's directing, as we mentioned, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. He actually directed the entire Maze Runner trilogy, which is based on a pretty good series of novels. And these are the Maze Runner films aren't like they aren't essential. They're nowhere close to it, but the first one at least I think is pretty fun to watch. It's got a pretty good cast: Dylan O'Brien, Will Poulter. The kid everybody says should play Link in a Legend of Zelda movie. Giancarlo Esposito. I'm sorry, I butchered your first name. He's in the sequel, so yeah. Maze Runner.
Nice.
It's just a fun dystopian YA. I guess, dystopian science fiction. I kind of tied it into Planet of the Apes even more.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. So yeah, Maze Runner.
Too many connections. I love it. Great pick. I've never seen it, any of them, or read the books, but they are books, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's like,
Was your host?
Oh, sorry. Were you saying? I couldn't hear anybody. So if you were talking to me, I couldn't hear you.
That's okay.
Books and movies.
Nice.
Read them both, or read
Maybe
and
not.
watch.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Awesome. Thank you, though. That's a good recommendation. All right, Jacob.
So this recommendation isn't really digging deep. This is my backup pick for the Twilight Zone, and this will probably end up in our canon. I'm imagining at some point in the future, but I don't think it's in there yet. So I think I can talk about it. Just something I was thinking about a little bit when watching Planet of the Apes. One of my all-time favorite movies, WALL-E. Just another great, Earth is in an apocalyptic state. There's no apes there. But it's only been 700 years, so who knows? But there's a scene where, as we talked about in this podcast, where they scoop up the one plant. Kind of reminded me of Eve and that one single plant in the boot. And then you've got the by and large stuff, just kind of the last remnants of civilization. It's a lot more than just the Statue of Liberty, I guess. But when we talked about the McDonald's arches being, if this was in the 80s, sort of that vibe. But yeah, and then also the fact that when Charlton Heston starts his speech at the beginning, they've been on the ship for 700 Earth years. That just also kind of felt fitting because that's how long they had been on the ship in WALL-E. But just overall, I mean, it's a sci-fi movie that clearly tells the same kind of story about humanity, maybe a little bit more optimistic about humanity being able to refine itself and rediscover the good side of humanity. So if this one leaves you on a bit of a downer note, throw on Wally and restore your faith just a bit.
I love it. That's one of my favorite movies, like, ever. I think it's great. Awesome pick. I like all the parallels that you pointed out between the two. I definitely was not picking up on those, but that's sweet. For my second recommendation, I'm going to go with another movie. The similarity to I almost said The Breakfast Club. The similarities to Planet of the Apes is really just like another Cold War era science fiction flick with a lot of sort of cautionary parallels to the society that it was made during, and that's kind of where the similarities begin and end. I'm forgetting the year, and I'm forgetting the name of the director, but I'm recommending the original, The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Oh, nice.
I love that movie. I don't believe it's in the canon.
What?
So.
Probably could be, but
yeah, that's a great movie.
Yeah, love that flick. Cool. Well, Bob, back to you.
Oh man, so I got a bunch of. I decided that my theme, if there was such a thing, was 1970s sci-fi films that were a little weird. So Buck Rogers kind of counted because it was 1979 and it was released in theaters before it became a TV show. And then I was like just going through just weird films, and I'm still kind of hedging as to what I'm going to pick. I think, I'm just going to go with it. It's a 1971 sci-fi film that also starred Charlton Heston. And it's a post-apocalyptic movie. It takes place after a plague has killed off most of mankind, reducing those that remain to albino mutants who can't stand the sun, and one lone human being left to try and either propagate humanity or try and find a cure. I'm talking about Omega Man, which is it's another cheesy sci-fi film with Charlton Heston in it. It can be either really not that fun or extremely fun, depending on the mood and the people that you're with when you watch it. I kind of enjoy it as a not very good adaptation of Richard Matheson's Last Man on Earth. But and it's the middle of the three adaptations, and probably the least of the three. But Charlton Heston chews the scenery. It has one of the first interracial kisses on screen in it. Not the first, but other than that, it's just silly fun.
Love it. Great pick. Also have not seen that, but I dig that pick.
If you're going to watch it impaired and with other people.
Bob just reminded me of a recommendation. I'm not making the recommendation. I haven't seen the movie, but Soylent Green would have been
that's on my list.
Because I haven't
list of potentials.
Yep.
But I was looking up the things starring Charlton Heston and has that kind of twist in it and kind of that similar Twilight Zone type setup. Anyway,
same director,
nice.
I think. So.
All right, Duke.
All right. My final pick, I struggled, as I mentioned earlier, with recommendations for this movie. So, Raph, I'm giving you something that you like, an out there recommendation. I literally just Googled Planet of the Apes cocktail, and this is what came up. This is from Beach Bum Berry Remixed.
Of course.
And this is called the Planet of the Apes cocktail. I will give you guys the ingredients and how to make it, listeners. So then once this episode is done, you can then hit play again and listen to it while sipping this. So you will need a 1/2 ounce lime juice, 1 ounce orange juice, 1 ounce pineapple juice, 3/4 of an ounce of Tempus Fugit banana liqueur, or probably any banana liqueur would work. I'm talking now 1 ounce of Hamilton Jamaican Black, and then a 1/2 ounce of Trader Vic 151 rum. Now you're going to build everything in a shaker with crushed ice and shake well. You're going to garnish with a fresh banana slice speared to a cocktail cherry. Then you're going to top with a purple orchid, and then the guy who wrote this said in brackets, which I never have around. So don't feel too bad if you also don't have a purple orchid around. So yeah, and I guess that's how you make a Planet of the Apes cocktail. So when you're listening to this podcast, or like we said, rewatching all the movies before Kingdom, why don't you make yourself a couple of Planet of the Apes cocktails?
Amazing. Nice. Duke, you absolutely crushed that one. That was great. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Google, for actually coming up with results for a Planet of the Apes cocktail. So
that's amazing. That's so good. We'll all have to try it and then reconvene
see if it's
on
actually
another
worth
episode
it.
to see how it is. Yeah, awesome. All right, Jacob, what's your third pick?
So for my third pick, I am actually going to be recommending a book as well. It's called Upgrade by Blake Crouch. I think one of the great modern sci-fi writers. He's got actually an Apple TV show coming out this year. Actually next month. Trailer just dropped for it called Dark Matter. But anyway, this is his other book, Upgrade. And I chose this because the story follows a guy who he's like a detective of like biological warfare stuff. It's hard to explain, but he gets infected with some kind of virus and it starts to upgrade him. He starts to become smarter, faster, stronger, and he's not exactly sure what's going on. But he comes to find out at some point along the way that this virus has been kind of released on the population at large, and it's kind of making other people go through these changes, but a lot of people are also dying. And so he's trying to get to the bottom of it and stop it. And by the time you get to the end of the book, it really takes a bigger picture look at the human condition and this idea of evolution and what it means for humanity to evolve and how best humanity can evolve to save themselves from an impending disaster like the one we see in Planet of the Apes. Some differing theories of what's hindering humanity from evolving past the point where they do that to themselves. It's a very good book.
Nice.
I've
not read that, but I loved Dark Matter and very excited for that TV show. I hope it's good.
Was he the guy that did the Wayward Pines
Yes.
show? Okay, that's cool. I will have to check both of those books out.
Nice. Awesome pick. I love that. Sweet. All right. I think I have to go with my backup because the Twilight Zone was taken. So we talked about it before. This movie obviously has probably the most iconic, twist ending of all time. So I'm going to recommend another movie with a great twist ending, maybe not up to par of Planet of the Apes, but still great. Still one of the most memorable, most iconic twist endings of all time. Another movie that I'm really sad that it's not in the canon, but I'm recommending 1999's The Sixth Sense.
Nice.
Not a lot of M. Night fans here.
No, that's great. And it's got a twist ending, just like...
Yeah. That's where I thought you were going with it
Yeah.
because earlier when we mentioned The Empire Strikes Back, I was like, okay, well, we're missing the only, the other big twist
Right.
in there.
Yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. It's good. I like The Sixth Sense a lot. I think it's a great film.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of it. I could see why it's not in the canon, but I would also definitely understand if it were. Cool. All right, let's run through the recommendations quickly. Boom, boom, boom. One last time. Bob.
All right, stopping all over two of my other co-hosts on this, Twilight Zone, the TV show 1959-1964, created by Rod Serling. Specifically, the episode I Shot an Arrow into the Air from season 1. Second pick was Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, the 1979 feature film that was then turned into a television series. And 1971's Omega Man, can't remember who directed it, but Charlton Heston fights albino mutants in a post-apocalyptic city.
And I had the 2006 animated film Curious George. Then I had the Maze Runner film adaptation, which is directed by Wes Ball, who was directing Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And then I had the Planet of the Apes cocktail, which you'll have to rewind because I'm not going to say all the ingredients and instructions again, but hopefully it'll be tasty. So there you go.
And I had Bone Tomahawk because of the three dudes wandering around a desert land. Wall-E, this dystopian sci-fi aspect of that, and Upgrade by Blake Crouch.
Awesome. I've got the novel Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I've got The Day the Earth Stood Still, the original from 1951, directed by Robert Wise. I can't believe I forgot his name on that one. And then I've got 1999, M. Night Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense with Bruce Willis and that kid who can see dead people. Bob, Duke, and Jacob, thank you guys for another lovely episode. This was a ton of fun. Thanks, y'all.
Yeah, thank you, man. Always fun.
Always fun. Always fun talking about plapes.
Yeah.
Apes. Yeah, we didn't
You waited till the end to say that.
Yeah, we didn't utilize it enough.
No, not enough
but that's
plapes.
okay. We're all big plapes guys here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks again. I don't know if we're gonna get
That should
the
just be
three-
the ending.
Yeah, that's it. Boom, plapes. I don't know if we're gonna get the three of you on for any other episodes in season 2, or season 3 rather. We got about another month or so left of episodes. But yeah, if we don't have you guys on again this season, we'll definitely see all three of you in season 4. Anything to plug on the website? I think Jacob has a written canon entry that went up last week for Promising Young Woman. I don't know if we have any other canon entries that are out now or coming up that we want to plug.
Let's see. Yes, Jacob made his written canon debut. He's been on the podcast, but he actually
Nice.
had never written one yet.
This
Tomorrow
week. Yep.
is Bob, you're it's actually yours. So yeah, why don't you tease or give a little hint?
Yeah, this week, tomorrow, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite films of all time, Bride of Frankenstein. So stay tuned.
Yes, that's getting added. And we've just finished the 100 most controversial movies of all time list. So head to screenagewasteland.com and see what made the top 10. Later this month, we still have the 20 greatest Hitchcock films of all time dropping. We still have a DC Extended Universe collab ranking that'll be coming out at some point in April. And yeah, that's really it. I don't know if Raph, you got any teasers for the Canon podcast itself you want to plug now to get people to come back? So I'll throw it back to you.
I mean, we've got a ton of stuff planned for the rest of season 3. next week we'll be back with Apocalypse Now. We are doing, for May the 4th, we're going to be doing a special Star Wars episode. We've got Akira coming up, and we've got The Princess Bride coming up. So all amazing episodes. We're going to have great guests on for all of those. Should be a ton of fun. Yeah, that's exciting stuff. I can't wait for it. We hope that you join us for all of those episodes and all future episodes of the Canon. We will at some point have episodes on Promising Young Woman and Bride of Frankenstein, now that we have written canon entries from Jacob and Bob on those two movies. So that'll be something to look forward to in the future as well. But like I said, we'll be back next week talking Apocalypse Now. Very excited for that one. Love that movie. I think our first Coppola. But yeah, we will see you there. And until then, we'll see you in the wasteland.